18 years old, I mean, that's not a lot of people invest in the 18-year-old gang.
So a couple 18-year-olds come forward with this idea. Do you remember what the opening valuation was when you invested?
30 million plus or minus 5.
Okay, and so 30 million to 10 billion in 2 years' time.
Yeah. It's got to shatter all kinds of records. But again, I don't want people to feel like that's a bubble, because the revenue growth also shattered all kinds of records.
Yeah.
And so from a cold start, I don't think anything like that's ever been done before. But you're going to see a lot more of them now, too. They just are setting the trend for many, many other companies. I think what's different about them is they're inspiring an age of people that normally would have been uninvestable 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And now it's kind of, mainstream.
We've made that point that the average age of a unicorn, a VC-backed unicorn, a decade ago was sort of mid-30s, right? In terms of the average age of the founders. And today, I think, Dave, what you found out of the investments we're doing, especially out of MIT and Harvard, it's age 20 to 23. And these guys were 18 when they started?
Yeah, 18. They got through 1 year of college, and then they got frustrated with the pace, like everybody does.
Which goes to
but
the point,
they met in high school.
Which goes to the point, Alex, you made last time on the last WTF episode, which was, listen, if you really believe we're sort of post-AGI on the verge of ASI, advanced superintelligence, going to college during those years and trying to get credits versus building something, it's not the right trade.
It's going to distort all sorts of societal cues and societal expectations. The best, I would say, fiction treatment that I've seen of this is a novella by Werner Vinge, Fast Times in Fairmont High, where you see this start to completely distort the way secondary education is run in this country, and you start to see high school students and middle school students suddenly spending all of their time doing startups. And I think it's entirely plausible we find ourselves in a near future that looks a lot like
I agree. And one of the points here, I think, that we need to realize, people need to realize, is the MAC, sort of peak creativity. If you measure it by when a Nobel laureate does their Nobel Prize winning work, or not when they get their prize, but when they actually did their work, is typically in the first half of your 20s. Alex, do you have the data there at all off the top of your tongue?
Not at my fingertips, and I've seen those statistics too, and I've seen how they vary from field to field, purportedly math versus physics versus other fields. I also tend to discount this notion because I expect that in the very near future, most of the innovation is actually going to come either from pure AIs or some sort of human AI hybrid. So I view those statistics maybe self-servingly as more of a retrospective, this is how things used to be at best versus how they're going to be in the future.
Every week, my team and I study the top 10 technology metatrends that will transform industries over the decade ahead. I cover trends ranging from humanoid robotics, AGI, and quantum computing to transport, energy, longevity, and more. There's no fluff. Only the most important stuff that matters, that impacts our lives, our companies, and our careers. If you want me to share these metatrends with you, I write a newsletter twice a week, sending it out as a short 2-minute read via email. And if you want to discover the most important metatrends 10 years before anyone else, this report's for you. Readers include founders and CEOs from the world's most disruptive companies and entrepreneurs building the world's most disruptive tech. It's not for you if you don't want to be informed about what's coming, why it matters, and how you can benefit from it. To subscribe for free, go to dmantis.com/metatrends to gain access to the trends 10 years before anyone else. All right, now back to this episode. Well, there's another company I want to talk about here, and we have a couple of guests to join us. If you're an entrepreneur, listen to how they built this company. This is a company on the doorstep of being a unicorn itself. A company that you're going to hear a lot about in the coming years. Dave, you want to introduce our guests and Blitzy?
God, I cannot wait. So we have Brian Elliott, Sid Pardeschi, the founders of Blitzy. My son Jack interned with them this summer, and I tell you, it drove my wife a little nuts. She started thinking, wow, we're going to play a lot of tennis this summer and have a great time. Jack got so wrapped into the culture of Blitzy so quickly. It's the most high energy place I think I've ever seen. Morale is off the charts, and so he pulled in his best friend from high school, Yash Balachetti. They pulled in a couple of other young computer science majors at Northwestern and a couple other places. The whole gang work all summer on Sweetbench and crushing numbers. But I tell you, the morale of this group is like nothing I've ever seen. The mission is incredibly cool and fun. So can't wait to tell you all about it. So Brian, he is a West Point alum. My one experience in life with West Point was Rick Dalzell, who was my biggest and most important customer I ever had, actually. He ran All Things Complicated at Walmart, massive logistics, 500,000 people moving around. And then he got poached by Jeff Bezos to work at Amazon. So he was the number 2 guy at Amazon right when they were in total hypergrowth, and he had a West Point background, really understood morale, people, logistics. And then, Brian went to Harvard Business School after that. Sid went to BITS, which is, the MIT of India. It's actually statistically much harder to get into than MIT, if you can believe that, Peter.
I can.
So top of the class at BITS.
MIT let me in, so there's got to be some flaws there.
Oh, so humble. So Sid, after that, we spent a long time at NVIDIA and saw it go from tiny to monstrous. So that's got to be inspiring. And I actually don't know their story before that, but they met at Harvard Business School. And they're, I think, inspiring to a different class of people. They were already in a career path, and then AI hits the world, but they're nimble. They're not going to watch it happen. And this is way too rare. People remapping their entire life to take advantage of what's happening right now. So I hope a lot of the listeners today get a lot out of their backstory and their transition to building this incredible company, Blitzy.
Yeah, and I really want to frame the story here as David versus Goliath. We've heard about $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. And how do you compete in that world, right? If you're a young entrepreneur, you're building a company and you're wondering, are you going to get literally decimated in the wake of Google or OpenAI or xAI just, happening to release a particular feature? How do you compete? What's your moat? So, Brian and Sid, welcome. Pleasure to have you both. Where are you guys this morning?
I am in 1 Kendall Square here at Little Link Studio offices with the MIT right behind me. So we just walk over the talent from the MIT AI lab right over to here to work, which works well for us.
I'm nearby in Cambridge.
Fantastic.
The first thing we had to overcome was convince Dave that we could be successful when we're not 19 years old. So he totally flipped the paradigm on I'm talking to young people, and I said, Dave, when I was these kids' ages, I was out, across the ocean fighting a war, and I think I gained enough experience to hopefully have a second career here in technology. Peter, I love the question that you're asking, right? Which is, how on earth do you compete with these frontier AI labs, with Google, right, with OpenAI? And there's really 2 reactions you can have when there's these $1 trillion investments, right? There's the reaction where you built a company that you say, oh no, right? They're gonna steamroll over me.
Yep.
And then there's the reaction where when every single model gets better, and the combination of those models makes your product much better, you're jumping for joy.
Oh
so
my
we
God,
spent $1 trillion of R&D for Blitzy, and we're
a rising tide, and you can float on top of all of that. That's perfect. But it's critical to find that product market that is able to benefit from the rise of these technologies.
So the thing is,
Yes.
this is the second time we're seeing this happening. So I was at NVIDIA back in 2016. And I heard all about the story of CUDA, and I saw Jensen believe in that. That was pre-Gen AI. The term Gen AI didn't exist, right? And I've been working on generative AI models since the Attention is All You Need paper came out. So Jensen was asked to stop investing in CUDA. He started this back in 2006, right? And it was negative to the company. But he still invested in it. He still believed in AI. He worked with researchers and built the technology to solve problems that he foresaw. And that is very relatable to what we're doing. So Blitzy, we'll go into this data for sure, but it's very unique in terms of how the product is built. It is specific to the enterprise, and it is based on the opportunity that we've seen over many years, working at largest companies like NVIDIA.
I think we should begin, for those who don't know Blitzy, explaining what it is. I want to get into where were you guys when you said, aha, we're going to build this? I know. I love that
Yeah.
founding story, and then I'll unleash Alex Wiesner-Gross on you to ask the most intelligent and important questions.
well, let me tell you what it does today, and then I'll tell you the humble beginnings of all of this, Peter. So, Blitz is an enterprise-grade autonomous software development platform. So, we ingest and understand up to 100 million plus lines of code, where most single LLM tools are stuck with this finite ability to understand context. So we've developed some really unique context engineering systems to understand enterprise-scale code bases. From there, an enterprise will express their work from a development perspective. Whether that's a COBOL to Java upgrade, very common in these old financial service institutions that use us, or steady-state development work. Blitzy will send off the most compute-intensive workload in the entire AI code generation space. We've done a 12-hour run, we've done multi-week runs for massive scale code bases, ultimately delivering high-quality, pre-validated, pre-compiled, pre-tested code, right? In our view, our thesis is we want to increase the quality of code at any cost, because the other side of a pull request that comes from AI code gen is human labor, which is exponentially more expensive. And so that's really the view that we have: enterprise scale, high quality code.
All right, Brian.
Let me tell you
I want you to slow that down for a second. Which is to say, a lot of companies out there, a lot of traditional companies, in particular in the finance world, you're saying, insurance world, have large code bases. They have software that they have, have inherited for how old are some of the software systems that you're playing in?
I mean, we're talking about PL1,
Oh my God.
COBOL. These are old school financial service institutions that, quite frankly, for a long time have been afraid to touch the code because the cost to get something modern just wasn't worth it.
Okay,
right?
so you've got a company out there running COBOL from what, 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah, that's right.
And their system is operating, it's working, it's not doing anything significantly useful given that it's 20 or 30 years old. And do they have people that can still, patch that code? I mean, are there engineers
They're
still
aging
around?
out. They make you and Dave look like spring chickens.
We spring chickens.
Oh yeah, I know you're a longevity guy, Peter. You look great.
So-
but they're aging out.
So you got this problem where you're too scared to touch it because you'd have to do a wholesale replacement. And so they call in the Blitzy guys, and
That's right.
you come in and you're able to do what for this 30-year-old chunk of code?
For starters, we give them visibility. So we'll ingest, index, and understand the state of their underlying source code, of which times they rarely have somebody that understands the entirety of tens of millions of lines of code. It's actually an impractical problem to know that. And then we allow them to execute large-scale transformations. So whether that's getting onto a modern technology stack, or that's adding required functionality, these businesses, these enterprises are stuck with the inability to layer artificial intelligence on top of their existing code base because it is so old, so antiquated, and has so little visibility of what they're doing.
Massive value creation.
So it's a mind-blowing experience too. If you take 10 million lines of unintelligible, undocumented code, and you run it through Blitzy, and then you say, "Tell me what it does in plain English. Explain to me where there are bugs." It's just you're talking to the code. It's mind-blowing.
Like one of
Just an
my
experience.
favorite uses of Gen AI is to give it some patent that is unintelligible and say, what does this do, and how could I use it in my company, right? The ability to take something that's complex and make it understandable, to grok it fully, to use that term. Thank you, Robert Heinlein.
Well, Sid's got 27 patents, so I had to use that to understand what the heck he did at NVIDIA.
So Sid, you were at NVIDIA for 5 years?
8 years. Brooklyn.
8 years.
Yeah, 6
I
years.
heard, I heard Jensen recently say that most of the executives there are now billionaires. Did you make it to that status?
Well, I held on to my stock. I rode the wave from like double-digit billion to $1 trillion, but then I got 2
You
degrees
can do
from
the
Harvard.
math, Peter.
And then what happened?
I got 2 degrees from Harvard, so they took all the money.
Oh, no way. Wait a minute.
Oh my God!
hilarious.
Let's not get started on the expense and value of degrees from Harvard or MIT or any of the Ivy League schools. So this is a David versus Goliath story, and I want to understand, you've got incredible success, but before we get to that story, you guys are both at Harvard Business School. When did this idea germinate? What was the causative agent that said, okay, let's build that? What was that founding story like?
Yeah, if you can rewind the clock back to the GPT 3 to 3.5 era, right, where these things could code, but it wasn't what we're experiencing today, right? At that time, Sid and I were doing a pro bono project for our favorite local bakery here in Boston, as part of our time at Harvard, and they mentioned they're about to spend $300,000-$400,000 on a new mobile app, which got our attention, some young enterprising entrepreneurs. And so Sid and I went home, and we did what is now 2.5 years later called vibe coding, and we built them the application overnight, right? But through that experience,
literally over the weekend.
over the night, yeah. Which now is a no deal, but it became.
Did they pay you, $200,000 for that?
We should have acted like it took longer. I think that was our first mistake. But what was so clear during that time is that Sid and I were actually the bottleneck for development. And so we were, you get an error, you get it back to the system, and then you give it to a different model, right? And then through that practice, we were able to get much higher quality code. And so we said, if we could just invent a system where all the commoditized development work can be removed, right? We could have multiple models going back and forth, iteratively refining and getting to code that compiles and tests. That is going to be what the future looks like, right? And we learned that by doing, by being hands-on, and then having an idea of what the enterprise needs from Sid's experience and building towards that.
Were you guys already friends, or did the all-nighter make you friends?
Yeah, we're buds. But we've only gotten. Sid's actually the godfather to my youngest son, believe it or not. So
that's
the system of
important.
investing in best friends is pretty good.
Okay.
I mean, and that's another part of the story, Dave, that we've talked about is some of the most successful companies are when best friends get together and just build 24/7. It is I say this to the entrepreneurs that I coach, being an entrepreneur and having co-founders, you're going to spend more time with your co-founders in the trenches than you do with your husband or wife or kids. It's an intense period of time, and you better pick somebody or some buddies that you love spending time with.
Yeah, I always tell people, imagine you're on a long international flight, one of those 14-hour flights, and you're sitting right next to somebody. Do you walk off the plane feeling good and having fun, or do you walk off the plane not waiting to get away from this person? Your startup's going to feel just like that every day. It can be work or it can be fun. It just depends on the personalities and the match.
So Dave, what do you find most exciting about Blitzy, just from as an investor? And so they came through Link Studios and Link Investment. Tell us a little bit of the story, if you would.
Well, they're definitely much more experienced than a lot of the entrepreneurs around the studio. So they had the plan and the idea fully baked on arrival. We were still first money in and still gave them space and support and have made a bunch of introductions, but they already had it more than figured out. So that's not all the companies fit that profile. They're also, very different. A lot of the companies coming right out of dorm rooms will do image generation. They'll do, they don't understand the word COBOL or PL1 to save their lives. And so when I look across the range of business plans that are right in front of us with AI, more of them fit into the you need to understand the domain space than you could just think of it in a dorm room space. There's maybe 2/3, 1/3 rough numbers. And so what I'm hoping with Brian and Sid is that they inspire a ton more people to go after these. These are still multi-trillion-dollar markets, but they're not, AI girlfriend. They're not, apartment search. Not things you can just think of while you're in another photo sharing app. They're and they get really deep. You've got all these, manufacturing, semiconductor manufacturing, automation. That's really deep. You get insurance, actuarial risk adjustment. That's very deep. This one is actually nice in that it's very, code generation is very broad. So it's a huge market, but it's also deep in that, like refactoring 10 million line code bases is a pretty deep knowledge set. The other thing that's really cool about Blitzy to me is that we have all these code generation products. So I use Cursor, we've got Windsurf, Replit, Lovable. Companies are all worth billions now. But they're, I write a lot of code, or I tell it to write a lot of code, it creates a button for me. I say, I don't like that button, make this other widget. And, you're doing it in real time. Mm-hmm. but you can't build something really big, you know. And when you put Cursor in full agent mode, it's right in no man's land. It sits there and grinds for like 5 or 7 minutes, which is too long to wait, but too short to build something substantial. So they're getting stuck in no man's land. Blitzy just said, no, we're going all the way to the other end, where it's going to run all night long, or all week long, like Brian was just saying, and come back with something really big. And that's just fundamentally a much different engineering problem than what Lovable, Replit, Cursor, Windsurf are doing. It's a different kind of company. I don't know of any other company that's there.
Amazing. Well, we're here today to announce a particular piece of news as well. Some groundbreaking news. Is it Brian or Sid? Which one do you want to talk about? What you guys accomplished?
Sid, please. You are the inventor of the technology here.
Yeah,
Sure.
Sid,
So,
tell us.
so every time a new model comes out, they benchmark on this leaderboard, which is called SweBench Verified. The leaderboard itself was built by OpenAI. It is a subset of SweBench. It contains 500 problems that were vetted by the researchers at OpenAI, and they confirm that these are solvable problems and these are worth testing models on. And it's been ubiquitous, so every time a new one comes out, you always see results. The current top of the leaderboard on the SweBench website as of filming is 75.2%. So we hired a bunch of extremely talented interns. So Dave, going back to Jack, if we could hire him today, we would. That's how good some of these interns are. And every single intern who worked for us, they were amazing. We were really credit this to their effort and to Neeraj, who led the efforts on our end. But we ran Blitzy on SweBench, and as it turns out, these are 12 repositories, but they have 500 branches, and that equates to 400 million lines of code if you ingest them on Blitzy, right? We've ingested anywhere from 1 to 2 billion lines of code overall on Blitzy, depending on how you count it, because you count updates and the whole raw thing as well. So it's 2 billion lines of code if you count all the updates, right, including SweBench. So we ingested all of that. We ran Blitzy on solving the problems, and our final result, accounting for everything that we've tested and verified using SBCLI, was 86.8%. That is a significant jump over the current leaderboard on the website. And the last time this was done was when Devin had a 13% jump from 1% to roughly 14 point some percentage. So we've come a really long way with the system, and the primary reason that we were able to achieve this, echoing some of the points that were made earlier, is we're very different from the existing tool structure, right? So one thing is you can reproduce these results in production using Blitzy, right? We've not added any custom scaffolding just for SweBench. We've not tampered with any of the features just to achieve this. We've seen reports from some of the other labs that claim that even though, for example, let's say a latest frontier model claims 80% on SweBench, if you actually run it and reproduce it, you get 60%, right? And we wanted to not have that problem. We care deeply about reproducibility and the practical real-world applicability, right? Which SweBench Verified has been vetted to be good at. So you can reproduce these results, and it's live as of today.
Amazing. Hey, Alex, help us understand how big and important this particular hallmark is for the company and for the world. Give us some background here.
Sure. Well, first to Brian and Sid, congratulations on your announcement. I think I would expect there's going to be an enormous amount of interest from the community once they hear these results in trying Blitzy and in reproducing those results. So congratulations in advance on the onslaught of interest that I expect you will receive. I think to answer Peter's question, I think software engineering is arguably the first major vertical of human labor that is very high economic value, very high productivity, that is perhaps succumbing to automation. So any sort of step function improvement in software engineering is arguably super transformative to the global economy. And maybe just pivoting on that thought, one of the first things that I was wondering when I heard that you would be announcing these results, and maybe jumping back 8 months, we all remember when DeepSeek, aka Highflyer, launched R1 January of this year, and there was sort of an aha moment all around the world. They didn't just announce a new reasoning model, they announced, and maybe this got a lot less attention, they announced a bunch of new open source libraries at the systems level, like a new file system. So one of the first things that I was wondering when I learned that you'd be making this announcement is the whole world is sitting on this sort of palimpsest of legacy libraries and operating system code, billions and billions of lines of code, Linux, Python, GNU, all of these libraries. Is there something that you and Blitzy and this new remarkable capability that you're announcing can do to speak to what can we do to improve the performance of this entire tech stack that the whole world runs on at this point?
That's a fantastic part of the question. We've been running some of these experiments. We've been taking some of these open source libraries that, for example, was written in MATLAB for one of our customers that they were using, and we converted it to Python. MATLAB was written 20 years ago. It was specific to Windows, and we made it OS agnostic. We run these POCs all the time, where we go from OS agnostic to OS specific to agnostic, from traditional to modern. But we've also been running other kinds of POCs, where, for example, we picked an NVIDIA repo. We identified an issue that was marked as open, and we just put Blitzy at it, and we solved it. We created a pull request that solved the issue, right? So if you think about that problem, you can identify bugs, issues, feature requests in any of the modern frameworks and systems, and the system is not limited by how much code, how big the repo is, right? So you can send Blitzy at it, it'll come back with a solution. You don't like it, you can iterate over it. You can create 5 projects, get 5 different pull requests, see how that works, and deploy it, all within a matter of days. I think that's a fundamental shift that really is going to change the way people work with open source and also closed source technology.
Amazing. What is the largest repository of code that you actually tackled?
I think we Brian, you want to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we frequently see 20 million lines, but I think the absolute largest we've seen is about 60 million lines that we've onboarded successfully.
That's crazy. And how long, just for comparison, for fun, if you had to guess, how long would it take in terms of human labor hours to do that?
It's insane. It's insane, Brian. I think we frequently scope these, right, as part of the POC process, and I think you can probably speak to that.
So what we do, so there's a question of how long would it take to grok 60 million lines of code, and the reality is it's just too big for a human to understand. So you might pay Accenture $100 million in 3 years, and they might come back with some diagrams over the 60 million lines of code, and
by the
might
way,
pay $10 million.
By the time they did that, what they came back with would be out of date.
Exactly, which is why you can see that essentially the industry has been stuck. This is why your airlines are always misrouted and they can't get their software updated. It's this kind of fundamental problem. So every time we run Blitzy, we actually estimate for the clients in production, all our enterprise clients, how many hours were automated. And the CIOs love this because it's like the KPI they go give the board on how many hours they've automated away by their intelligent vendor selection. But grokking is sort of an impossible problem, but the real value is in the code generation, right? Being able to accurately affect and develop code and accelerate that life cycle for the development team while on that large underscoring focus. But importantly, Alex, I know you want all developers to sort of go away and we're going to live in a society of abundance, but I think it's kind of going to go in the opposite direction where there's almost an infinite demand for code, right, and for software development. And so Blitzy doesn't do everything. Blitzy does about 80% of the quantum of work on average for these large-scale problems, but it knows exactly what it doesn't do, which is really the power. And it sort of hands off that batch of work to the human developers to finish things out. So we get a really clean, full pull request plus human labor at the end to accelerate the development and not sort of remove the need for the developers altogether.
So I have just, if I may, just to pull in the thread, Brian, I mean, I would argue we're about to enter sort of an age, not necessarily of just abundance, but of great projects, when it's possible to send basically let lots of automation loose on the world and fix all the problems, solve everything, as it were. In the case of Blitzy, this is letting AI agents loose on an enormous, sprawling legacy codebase and just fix everything.
I think it's a good name for the episode, Solve Everything.
or a book, or fill in the blank. But are you familiar? Maybe you're tracking this project. I love this idea. The Great Refactor is a project.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
So what is that,
so-
Alex? What's the Great Refactor?
So the Great Refactor, I love this. This is like a classic solve everything concept. We've built our whole civilization on a bunch of software libraries that could be better maintained, that are filled in many cases with legacy memory vulnerabilities. There are statistics out there that most of the insecurity of present day software is due to the way the software is written that exposes them to certain type of cybersecurity vulnerability, memory vulnerabilities. And if we can only rewrite all of these libraries, that sort of, if you know the meme that goes around of the entire stack being built on, of civilization being built on just like one block, it hangs by a thread. If we could rewrite all of these libraries and dependencies and software supply chain upstreams that our whole civilization depends on in Rust or some other memory secure language, suddenly that would fix almost all, that would solve everything in terms of so many vulnerabilities. So
I think I had like 200 customers send me that project. Like they just like immediately saw that in Hot News Today, and they all sent it to me like, "Oh, are you guys gonna do this?" And I said, "Well, are you gonna pay for it?" Like, the thing is, he thinks it's worth it.
Here's the most critical thing, right? If you think about this idea where you can give these projects refactors or whatnot to AI and have it come back with the code, right? You can do that with any chatbot. You can give it to any AI, have it write code. Like getting code from AI is a commodity, right? But if you add constraints to that problem where the code needs to replicate the existing functionality, it needs to compile, all the unit tests needs to pass, it should not have newly added security vulnerabilities, and all the other items that are, crucial to the enterprise or the problem itself, right, that make it valuable. That's when the challenges begin, right?
So
That is
that-
not something you can achieve.
So Sid, my question is, I got 3.2 billion lines of code, which is my genome. Can you recompile that for me? Can you like go and identify or fix the broken parts? I
As
find
long
that
as
fascinating.
LLMs can write, as long as it's in the language that LLMs are trained on understanding, we can do it. The scale is the problem that we've solved for, and the other problem we solve for is making sure the requirements match, so that when we put you back together or edit you, you actually look like you, right? It's validated that it is you. We didn't change or break something that you shouldn't have.
Alex, what do you think about
You guys should,
the bio?
Yeah, so maybe narrowly on the bio, there are many other projects that speak the language of the genome and the proteome that I think, Peter, for rewriting your genome, you'll have the opportunity over the next few years to use one of these biological sequence-based foundation models to do some variant of that. I do want, for Brian and Sid, though, really pull on the economics of this. So I really want to press you guys. When we talk about the Great Refactor or some of these great projects to basically rewrite the source code basis for much of our civilization today, and you think about the economics of that, and there is a school of thought that says we're seeing generative AI hyper-deflate by 10x per year or so, an order of magnitude cost reduction every year. At what point in your minds do you think using Blitzy or maybe competitive tools, does it become reasonably economical to basically rewrite all of the legacy code out there that civilization depends on?
I mean, I would argue from a value perspective, it's there today because the value that this would be providing to society is just dramatic. Now, this is a question of like who's the payer. A line of code from Blitzy is 100x more cost basis than a line of code from any other provider, which is maybe 100x less than it would be from a human developer, right? So we're talking about huge orders of magnitude difference. And so would it be worth it from a society value to rewrite all the software today with Blitzy? Like, absolutely. But am I going to continue to serve these financial service institutions and insurance companies first that are readily paying me today? Like, yes. And so I think if you grab the capital funding for us to break even on this AWG, we'll start rewriting all the we'll rewrite Linux images too.
I'm going to insert another topic in here. You guys shot a really cool podcast. It's on your LinkedIn, where you're just bantering between the two of you about the fact that the definition of truth within large-scale software has always been the functional code. Here it is. This is the final thing. It runs the PL1 code that does all the nav accounting for the mutual funds, over at State Street. It's like millions of lines of legacy PL1. But that debugged code is the core asset, and then the documentation is just something around the edges. post Blitzy, the truth moves to the documentation because you can regenerate the code overnight anyway. And so your actual core asset has moved from code to a document, but it's going to move again. And this is where it was really cool to hear you guys bantering around, like, well, what is then the foundational truth of this piece of, because like Alex is saying, the entire infrastructure of society is about to move and also expand 100 or 1,000 or a million X. You know, because code is so cheap to create all of a sudden, we have much, much more of it. So you got a much bigger world, but the ground truth is some other format than just, you know, PL1 or COBOL or Python code. It's this human readable today spec becomes the central asset. That's a big shift.
The source. Yeah, the spec is still an abstraction layer, right? And so that's easy for the human to look at, right? The real source of truth or understanding is actually we create a customer specific hybrid graph vector database that understands exactly what is going on from a functionality perspective, and you can change that functionality from one language to another, but we are capturing the core essence of what is required there, and we can display that as a spec, which is 200 pages, but of 20 million lines of code, that's a intermediate representation, and really want to get back to the core DB level understanding. That's the core asset for these folks, and Blitzy makes it, and it's the property of the enterprise.
Hey everybody, there's not a week that goes by when I don't get the strangest of compliments. Someone will stop me and say, Peter, you got such nice skin. Honestly, I never thought, especially at age 64, I'd be hearing anyone say that I have great skin. And honestly, I can't take any credit. I use an amazing product called OneSkin, OS01, twice a day, every day. The company was built by 4 brilliant PhD women who have identified a 10 amino acid peptide that effectively reverses the age of your skin. I love it, and like I say, I use it every day, twice a day. There you have it. That's my secret. You go to oneskin.co and write Peter at checkout for a discount on the same product I use. Okay, now back to the episode.
Brian, given your background, you know, in the military, I mean, probably the one institution that's got the, you know, largest repository of ancient code has got to be the U.S. government, right? I mean, so can you attack all of that? I mean, unlock massive productivity. There's a lot of fear that the U.S. is a falling empire. Its inability to, you know, understand and legislate efficiently. I mean, couldn't you have like just a single massive impact on the U.S. government?
You know, Peter, I live back here in Boston, and so does this lead investor at Incutel, or so he tells me, because he keeps running into me when I'm walking to work and just bumping in and seeing how things are going, which has me skeptical. But the short answer is yes. Like, the U.S. government is a sort of fantastic end customer to ultimately modernize, to get your flights there on time, to make getting IDs easier, right? And so this is like an absolutely critical infrastructure that is a target customer that we have, certainly. Do we have them today? No. 12 months, will we be serving them? Like, I think yes.
Yeah, I mean, that could catapult you into a, you know, deca-billion-dollar company easily, just landing that kind of a customer. Because once you've modernized, you know, for one of the agencies, they're all going to want it.
Yeah, I think we have the most top secret security clearance to patent ratios of any company out there. So.
Fascinating.
I'd like to maybe pull on the theme that we've talked about on the pod in the past, the elephant in the room, which is recursive self-improvement. So, how much of Blitzy is written by Blitzy?
A lot. So it's interesting, right? Where this is actually a question about, like, where's the core value? And I would say every single sprint that we do from a software development perspective is driven by Blitzy. And so I would say a significant amount of the corpus of the code is driven by us. Now, there are algorithms that are not about writing code, right? They're about core invention. So I think most of the company's core IP is not going to be the software that it writes, but it's going to be some core invention that this is around. You think about Google with PageRank, right? Named after Larry Page, not actual pages. But PageRank is really the core source of the original IP. And Sid's invented a number of algorithms at the core of Blitzy that allow us to, for instance, always compile code to never have circular dependencies. So you can actually rewrite sort of a corpus of Blitzy with Blitzy pretty readily, pretty quickly, and it would look like it. But would it do what we do? The answer is sort of no.
Yeah.
And it gets the question,
freezes.
what is the source of IP for a company to
It freezes.
be a breakthrough or an invention.
It's similar to what we're doing, right, for these large companies. We're telling them, for many of them, we're telling them how to use AI, right? We're coaching them and consulting with them on how to use Blitzy.
Yeah,
You
pros.
cannot do that unless you actually use it yourself and perfected the process, right? Because they're not just making the engineering velocity changes or the tool usage changes, they're also making the process changes, and that's why this is critical.
Alex, I'd love you to take a second and dive into the SweetBench metric here. Again, if you could, for those who are not familiar, a little bit of the origin. You said Princeton and ratified by OpenAI, but what is it measuring, and who were the top leaderboards before? And then I want to get into the conversation about how do you compete against the Mag 7 or against sort of the frontier models in this regard. So let's contextualize it first, understanding what the SweetBench metric really is.
Sure. So for
And
context,
why don't we start with the title of the white paper, because that's going to drop same day that this podcast does. So people are going to need to find the paper.
And we should put a link to the white paper in the show notes here as well. Alex, please.
Sure. So maybe let me just speak to SweetBench. So SweetBench is a benchmark that measures the ability for AI systems to.
Okay, I've never played with Mewtwo before. 你看得见吗？我现在有 Mewtwo 在这个游戏，因为它免费给。我没有玩 Mewtwo 过。I've never played with Mewtwo before, so I'm gonna play with Mewtwo and see how it is. 没有玩过 Mewtwo， 试试看。Mewtwo, they said Mewtwo is A rank, so there's S rank. 我现在用我的那个新的 controller， 哎。这个 Mewtwo 也没有那么强，其实。没有那么强，他那 Gardevoir 我觉得更强的这个游戏。我应该用那个 Ninetales， 我觉得 Ninetales 比这个更强。他好像现在给免费了。Mewtwo 只是 A rank。你看 Mewtwo 这么差劲，打这么久还打不过。平时别的 Pokemon 他肯定会输我，打半天都打不过他。然后别的 Pokemon 呢就他们一下就输。你看打半天都打不过，如果是别的 Pokemon 他早就输。你看那 Gardevoir 其实更强的这个游戏。 我觉得不会用 Mewtwo， 但是这个是叫一个 battle 叫 Full Furry Battle， 跟平常 battle 也不一样。Mewtwo 这么差劲，在这个游戏，他这个 battle， 他人家可以一直 spam attack。你看这么差劲的 Mewtwo， 我看看他 Mewtwo 应该用什么东西，什么 item？ 如果用别的 Pokemon， 他绝对会输。哎，这看看，这是需要 Muscle Band and Scope Lens。Muscle Band and Scope Lens。但是平时正常游戏 Mewtwo 挺强，就这个游戏不是都不怎么强。这么差劲，他叫我用 Scope Lens， 为什么要用 Scope Lens？Future Sight and Recover。为什么叫我们用 Scope Lens Attack Weight a Muscle Band？ 你看，我只得43分，下次不用 Mewtwo。我看看，用正常的 mode， 我其实是刚才这不是正常的 mode。我玩一个别的 mode 试试。Map available in 1 hour. 30 years of Pokemon. $30 years of Pokemon Super Minute. 可以试正常的 mode， 那个 mode 是不一样，因为它 cooldown。只是1秒到2秒，就是人家可以一直 spam attack， 但是平时他要等7到8秒。So it says 6 and white。他叫我们用 Scope Lens， 为什么用 Scope Lens？ 我看看哪个是最强的 move。Side Strike and Teleport。Side Strike and Teleport. What is Excel Bracer? Attack +5, cooldown -1. 哇，这是什么东西？他已经选了吗？这好像不是正常的 mode， 这是什么 mode？这是跟 AI 打，哎，这个，但是好像正常的人在我们的 team。Okay, so I put weakness policy. Weakness policy. HP plus 210. 我这个 item 不错，我知道为什么我选这个选错了，应该选 attack， 然后我学 side strike 试试看 ，side strike and teleport。Side strike and teleport， 他叫我们用 side strike and teleport， 我选错了， 我下次用 teleport 试试看，会不会强？为什么 science rank and teleport？ 这个，反正我把它换，我看那个 emblem 啊，我这个没有玩过 ，skill， 这是能吗？没有哎，没有，奇怪，这个什么 mode？ 好像跟 AI 打，确实。不是没有东西在这边啊？为什么没有东西在这边啊？我操！我操！这个没有玩过，这是什么东西？这么多！Wave 2 survived， 这不好玩啊！我喜欢更正常的 mode。这跟 AI 能跟哎，这不好玩。Mewtwo 不抢啊？怎么这么多东西在这边？这 Mewtwo 这么 weak 吗？我觉得别的 Pokemon 比这个更强。为什么这个 Gengar 会活这么久啊？莫名其妙的 Gengar。我操！你活太久了。不好玩，我真觉得正常 mode 比这个更好，赢了。我改一个 mode。Event points。他这边说我得打最多分数 ，damage taken recovery。不怎么好玩这个，这个 mission， 哦 ，It's not that fun. It's 11 p.m. Held items. Held items. Held items. Increases attack. 准备睡觉，这个 mode 不好玩啊，可能有的人喜欢玩这个吧。我刚才试的，叫 Pokemon Parade Intermediate Casual。哦，Beach Style Venusaur。Beach Style Venusaur。Let's go, Beach Style Venusaur. What the hell, man? 它叫 Venusaur Flower Frog。Battle data damage dealt. Expert play expert 这不是很好玩，但是它会给你 items， you get items for completing it。那屁股弄你也不懂。屁股弄你啊，不明白，不明白，他的屁股我不明白。see. Boom 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 boom. 哇，4v1。 How long is this gonna be, man? Time's up. KO. They KO'd the Tinkaton, man. Expert. Damn it, man. KO. $81. $320, so we can get something. Good. Ekans. Ekans, let's see. Ekans attack plus 1 points. It's not useful. But Polywell. Blue and brown.睡觉，我这边12点了，没有那么好玩这个 mode。Close. Slip.